about the spark behind your favorite content creator, the journey, the challenges, and the stories that led them to the spotlight? Dive in with Giorgio Takanakis, known as Giorgio Says, and the mystical Natalie Rogers from Femme Tarot. Every week, one guest, countless stories. Let's get the conversation started.
All right, welcome to another episode of Creating the Creator podcast. Today's guest is Jess Rothschild from Hot Takes and Deep Dives podcast. She has a long resume, and we dive all into it. We also get into the conversation about how pop culture is affecting tons of different areas. We get into what inspires her, what has been her challenges, what she's learned. This was such a great, we even talk about spirituality. We actually dove into that, which I really love and want to keep doing more of that. But she shed light on a lot of things pertaining to just how to go about content, how to stand out more in the sea of creators, and how to be true to yourself in the same regard. What did you take away from this interview today?
It was a really interesting discussion, Georgia. I loved it because not only did we touch upon the content creating side of things, we also talked about the LGBTQIA plus community, how it's represented in pop culture, in reality TV, in podcasting. So there was a lot that we touched upon. I wish we had more time with her because we could have gotten a lot deeper in some of these topics. We talked about the cancel culture in the podcasting world and the content creation world. So you guys are really going to enjoy this episode, and you're definitely going to learn some stuff that we definitely did.
Well, without further ado, we won't hold this up anymore. Here's our conversation with Jess Rothschild. Enjoy.
All right, you guys, do you want to start?
Sure. All right.
Okay, so I'll start off with our icebreaker questions. Jess, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, so if your life had a theme song, what would it be and why?
It would be Lucky Star by Madonna. I feel such a connection to the lyric shine your heaven it's like shine your heavenly body tonight. Like, I love that. And I feel like everybody, I'm very much like, we create our own universe, like we are co-creators with the universe. And I feel like while the song is simplistic in its lyrics, for some reason I've always been so attached to that line. And like, we all have these heavenly bodies, and like, it's up to you whether like how much you want to express that to the outside world. But I do think we are all capable of magic, and it's up to you to like tap into that intuition. Like, I think all of us are a little bit psychic. And so, yeah, that's the first thing that came to mind.
I love this already. You are part of the collective, my dear.
Yes, I love that. I'll bring you on my channel then, because you're spiritual, and that's so spot on. That's so spot on. There is magic. We all manifest. Yeah. We all have intuition. We're all made of energy. We're all connected. So it's up to us how we manifest a life that we want to live, lead, and manifest as well. So I like that.
All right. So the next question for you would be, if you could be a contestant on any game show, past or present, which one would you choose and why?
I always loved Family Feud growing up. I feel like I'd be good in like a team sport like that, where you're able to like help the other people. Wheel of Fortune, forget it. Like Jeopardy, good luck. I'm just going to say Family Feud. I think I'd be good if I had a good like team with me.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's very important on that show.
Yeah.
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 And speaking of team, what's your sun sign? What's your star sign?
I'm a Leo.
Excellent.
I'm a Leo sun, a Sagittarius moon, and a Capricorn rising.
Wow. Powerhouse.
That is 3 power signs.
You're a powerhouse, girl.
A lot of fire. A lot of
Yeah.
fire.
Don't piss
And
you off.
Capricorn. Yeah, don't piss you off.
Yeah, let me tell you something. My partner is a Leo. My sister's a Capricorn. I'm an Aquarius. So the three of us can get in the ring and it would be a 4-day bloodbath if everyone was pissed off on the same day. So
That's so true. That is so true. Although Capricorns are a lot more patient than the Leos and the Aquas, people think that Aquarians, I'm an Aqua too, I'm an Aquarius too, that because we're, fixed signs and very, very stubborn, and people think that we're like, patient. We're not. But Capricorns are. So I'm sure your sister Georgia kind of tries to keep the peace sometimes.
She keeps me on she keeps me on the straight and narrow because I can go real far. She's like, wait a minute. You don't need to take it that far.
Yeah.
She has logic.
True.
She has logic.
True. Jess, if you could switch lives with a famous celebrity for a day, who would it be and what would you do in their shoes?
Probably Andy Cohen.
Ha!
That's an interesting
We never
one.
had that one.
No.
Because we're both New Yorkers. I mean, he's not from New York, but like he's lived here all of his professional life. I live actually quite close to him. I feel like it's actually the closest leap. And I feel I'm also like sort of a student of Andy Cohen. Like I've read all of his books and I listened to his radio show. And so what would I do? I would gather a group of friends, get into any restaurant I want. I would pick SJP's brain about a lot of things. And yeah, like I'm into all of his famous friends are people that I'm very interested in. So yeah, like I would have a lot to ask Sarah Jessica Parker. I'd love to hang out with Amy Sedaris. It would just be really gay and fun.
Oh my God, Amy Sedaris, I would lose.
I go to the same gym as her.
Yeah.
What?
I go to the same gym. Andy Cohen, Anderson Cooper, Sandra Bernhard, and Amy Sedaris, and like other people who I probably just don't recognize. I'm just into all those people. We all go to the same gym.
That's insane. I don't even know if I would be
Wow.
able to work out. I'd probably spend my time walking around getting water and
No,
checking
they're all
the
like
machines.
they're all with their trainers and like,
Obviously, I don't picture any of those people on a bike by themselves.
No, Anderson doesn't have a trainer. Anderson does his own thing.
Oh, well, look at that.
Imagine going out for drinks with them, with all of these people after the gym. That would have been amazing.
And what they talk about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What
Okay.
an interesting dynamic.
Well, the next question should be teed up then, because if your life were a reality TV show, what would the title be and what would the tagline be for the show?
I guess if my life were a reality show, I mean, it already existed. Can it be something that like existed already?
Sure. You can reboot it.
So okay, I guess I would reboot. So I don't know if you both will be familiar with this, but there was a reality version of the L Word called The Real L Word. It aired for 3 seasons on Showtime. And I feel like I'm not that well, I have my own story, but I feel like if I could cast it with like with people who I know have rich story in my life, I feel like that would be it.
I love that. And actually, I do kind of remember them doing a reality version, kind of, because I think for that show they saw how well it worked out when the scripted show was the OC, and then they did Laguna Beach, like trying to kind of mimic the reality version of what the sitcom was. I feel like they also did that with the L Word to try to say like this is a real thing.
And I've always said like the missing. Well, you know what? It would either be that or. Okay, it would either be The Real L Word or I would do, so you know how there's like Summer House and Winter House? The big thing that they're missing on Bravo, they need to put people in a Fire Island house and film that. Or like in Provincetown. That is the missing show that would be incredible, and I would like to be on that show as well.
Me too.
So we can just call it like Fire Island House or like Pine's House.
Pine's House.
And I would love to like make guest appearances there.
That would be so good. You know what came to mind? Do you remember Gallery Girls?
Oh yeah.
Yes. Oh my God, I loved that show.
I
Yeah.
love that show. Why don't they bring it back? I want a reboot of that, and I could see you on that one, Jess, for some reason. I don't know why. That's what came
There
to
are a lot of
mind.
1-season wonders like Gallery Girls, Princesses Long Island,
Yeah.
NYC Prep. I loved.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
many good ones. They need to
True.
get back. They need to pull from the archives and reboot some of these.
I
Yeah.
agree. Especially now because we're so oversaturated with the housewives and some of those shows. I mean, Winter House is not doing that great.
I can't
So
sit through
I
an
don't-
episode.
I can't either.
I can't watch it, guys. I feel like I'm
And
such
I'm
a fish out of
somebody-
water
I can't
about
sit.
it.
I can't sit through some. I used to watch Winter House when they would have like Lindsay and Carl in the
Right.
house, but I'm somebody. I say this as a person who I think the two best shows on Bravo are Summer House and Vanderpump Rules. So I like the kids shows. Like I'm a little over the Housewives. I still think
Mm.
that the kids shows have like authenticity and real like fire behind them.
I would agree to that part of it because I think in Housewives world, they come in very staged, like they
Yeah.
know that this is a show. Whereas the younger cast members of these other shows are just looking to get out and just, they don't really care. And that's a producer's dream, really, is someone who's not like, oh, don't use that. I don't want to say that. They'll say it all because they want it to be a soundbite. They get I think they get the longevity of it. But yeah, I do see the difference more and more now than when Housewives first started, when people didn't really know what it was. Now people are like casting to be on it. So it's like a modern day soap opera.
Yeah.
True. Very true. Now, our favorite question and the last of the icebreaker questions. What is the hottest thing that you've Googled late at night?
What is the hottest or the hardest?
The oddest, the
Oh,
strangest.
the oddest.
Okay.
The hottest.
Or the hottest. I mean, you could also tell us what's the hottest thing you've Googled.
No, okay. The oddest thing I've Googled. You know what? Can I look in my phone?
Absolutely. Most people have to reference back because they forget.
You know,
Zach did remember when he was here, he was going through his history.
Well, I think he was going through a specific situation, so he had it at the top of his brain.
You know, lately I've been lately a friend of mine is really into Reddit, and I'm not like a Reddit person, but lately there have been some interesting things going on, and so maybe it's like getting into some of the subreddits, which I've always like known they were there, and I would like look once or twice like in a year, but like it's more like, oh, like I feel like that's a section of the internet. It's so funny because I listened to this podcast called it's called Sounds Like a Cult, and literally the episode that came out today, the subject is Reddit.
Oh my God. That's
and this is on the
crazy.
heels of me like, you know, getting a little bit deeper into Reddit. So I guess it would be like Googling things that would lead me to a subreddit of an underbelly topic that I'm interested in.
It's almost like
Which is interesting that
synchronicity.
Right. And it's interesting you bring up Reddit because now Reddit I feel it's booming. It's kind of like taken over from Twitter, X. And I feel it's become like a lot of these people have like moved to Reddit right now. I'm actually enjoying Reddit. I'm not a big Redditor. I do go to Reddit. I do get information from Reddit like most of us. And I like it. It's to the point. There's not, it's just, you've got threads, you've got really
there's a lot of
commentary.
It's a wealth of information. If there's something you can't find elsewhere, I suggest Googling the topic and Reddit, and you will find what you're looking for there.
I need to do that. I've never done it that way. I've only just gone on Reddit, which is even scarier because you're just like in this big room of like multiple things happening. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even a lot of this podcasting drama that's been going on, or, just generally drama that's been going on, it's moved to Reddit. A lot of that has moved to Reddit now. It's crazy. And I don't think a lot
of people aren't on. It used to take place in Facebook groups, and a lot of people just aren't on Facebook. So
anymore,
it moved there. Yeah.
True. It's going to be interesting to see how it develops, how it evolved, how it's going to evolve Reddit, especially now with, Threads. Is anyone on Threads anymore?
I don't use it.
I don't use it, but I did the obligatory, like, hi, I'm here. I really thought I was going to like it. I really did think I was going to like it more, but I find, I don't know, maybe they're still figuring it out. It's just not, I don't know. It's there.
Yeah.
It's just another platform that no one it's enough already. We're so oversaturated, especially content creators. Speaking of content creators and because we this is the whole point of this podcast, is basically for people to get to know their favorite content creators and to really put out there and be transparent as how much work you have to put in as a content creator. What are the challenges that you keep coming across, and how do you sort of like, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, how do you come out? Like, it's such a big pool. Like, everyone has a podcast, everyone has a YouTube channel, everyone's on social media, but how do you stand out from the rest?
Here's the big question. Here's the thing. Yes, a lot of people there are a lot of podcasts out there, but how many of them are actually good? How many of them are actually listenable? And also, not every show, I mean, I can delve more into this as we get deeper into the subject, but like, I think podcasts are really split into two categories. You're either doing disposable content or not. And I think that there are a lot of people that just want disposable content, and those creators actually are the most successful. It's a lot easier, and you can churn those out. You can do a disposable content show 5 days a week, meaning recap. Like, we can get more into what that means, but having a show that is unique and full of new information every episode that isn't disposable and is intended to be evergreen and stand the test of time, that is so much harder. And it's ironic because it's not the most successful path to go. But that's my path. Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that, because I think it is true. I mean, yes, we all, like, obviously I recap shows on my pod, but just recently I've been brainstorming on how to take it outside of just what you were saying, right? Because you get lost in the sauce. How many recaps do you need to hear from a different perspective? And there are bigger topics to dive into that are like a subreddit of maybe the recap that we're not looking at as creators. And so that's such a good point to bring up, for sure.
Yeah, that's true. But the reason why people don't want to create more evergreen content is because it takes so much longer to start generating, engagement and numbers and views. Because there's so much information out there, and as you said, disposable. So people want to get involved in the drama.
Well, it's also a lot easier to, because the main difference is with disposable content, it's usually somebody reacting to something. So like a recap show, you are just reacting. The content is made for you. Like if somebody's just doing a news show, even like what Zach does, like I think he would fully co-sign. He does mostly disposable. I mean, he does interviews which are not disposable, but like the news just is the news of the day, and then you are reacting to it, or you are just reporting on it. It's there for you. You're not like creating something out of thin air. I don't know why I mentioned that. Yeah. Anyway, just to put a button on that.
Well, I think you were bringing it up because we were saying, Natalie was saying, how do you take what everything is going on around you in terms of content creators and how many podcasts and YouTube channels, et cetera? How do you stand out? And I think your point was, you got to figure out a way basically not to just keep doing that same format, because it's saturated. So it's a point of difference really that, and I think we've heard this throughout all of our interviews thus far, there's this one element that we all bring to the same table that just hits differently for the audience. And we all pretty much share an audience. Let's be honest. People jump around.
Yeah.
So, it's about what do you bring different to the commentary or the reaction, but then take it a step further, which is what I'm challenging myself with currently, is how do you balance it maybe with other types of content that's giving a little bit more of myself, and maybe perhaps that's my personal fear and that's where I'm comfortable is reacting. But I think, you know, we all want to elevate, and so that's such an important point, because I don't think people even know what disposable content or podcasting is like in terms of that. People just think, oh, this is my content, you know, I am making it, but it's a little bit different.
Right.
And I also think it's important that content creators have an objective. When they start this journey, they have to have an objective. It's just like a marketing plan. When you just like, when you want to put out like a product or a new service, you have to create a marketing plan or a business plan. Same goes for content creating, right? You have to do your SWOT analysis. You have to put out your objectives. What are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? Otherwise, you get lost in the sauce. As you said, you just get lost in all that, and then you lose yourself. And that's why we see a lot of content creators, or many content creators that we know personally, or we've seen, that they burned out. They're like, I'm taking a break, you guys, because I'm, you know, I feel like I'm burned out. Or they've got, you know, they're blocked. They don't know what else to put out there because they're so disconnected to the content that they put out because they have no objective. What are their objective? What do you think? How about you, Jess? How did you start? So let's start with your podcast. So how did it all start?
Okay, so like, how did I get even into like the work? Like that? Okay, so in 2009, I was on the founding team of this website called autostraddle.com. And I actually talked about this origin story. I interviewed Brandy and Julie, who you had on recently, and I've known them since 2009, since 2010, because we were all part of this website called autostraddle.com. It was, and it still is, the largest independent lesbian website on the internet. And that was where I met them and a lot of other great writers and creative people. And it was there that I started covering like gay pop culture. And so I was a writer there, and I had like a stroke of inspiration, maybe like 6 months in, that I kind of wanted to like put on my journalism hat and kind of like crack this little, like, you think it's like a version of like the podcasting drama that goes on now, but it was like in this little niche. There was like a drama that happened between two people who were part of a rival website. They abruptly left that website and went someplace else. They had been the face of this website, which was extremely popular, had the complete market share in this field, and or in this niche, I guess. And I was obsessed with this story. This is like a baby version of, you know, the Heather and Jeff story or whatever. Like, you can put the personas however you want, and or the archetypes rather. And I was like, I'm going to crack this story. Like, and it was from a burning desire I had, that I just genuinely wanted to know why they left this site. And I wanted to get to know them. I have like a never ending curiosity. Like, my curiosity level can never be scratched enough. So I had the opportunity to meet them, and I was like, I would love to interview you. I had never done an interview before. I had just written these articles, like covering, you know, whenever like Rosie O'Donnell was on the Howard Stern show. I was always a big radio listener and been listening to podcasts back when they were like in their infancy, just on the iPod. And I got an interview with them, and it like went viral in this like little world. And I became very close with those two people. And that was the first interview I ever did. And that kicked off a series, a 3-year experience where I was writing maybe 3 or 4 articles a week for Autostraddle, and maybe one of them would be an interview. And I would be booking these interviews. I was a nobody. I mean, I'm a nobody now, but I imagine me in like 2010, like sitting at my desk at my full-time job, literally like just using IMDb Pro to reach out to managers, reach out to publicists, and booking people sometimes very famous people to do an interview with me for this website. I would use a little recorder it would be over the phone, obviously. I'd use a recorder, I'd have the phone, and that's how I would have the audio. And then I would transcribe the interview. And all of those interviews still exist. And that was where I learned how to do tons of research, how to book guests, how to write an email that is going to get a response from a manager publicist. And yeah, so that's my background. And then cut to maybe like 2018, I fell into podcasting totally by accident. I never intended to be like the face of anything. And I was always very self-conscious about my voice, actually. And I met somebody by pure happenstance. And at this point, I was very into the Housewives. I got into the Housewives through like a backdoor way, and suddenly was obsessed with like the New York Housewives. That was the one that I loved. And I particularly loved Bethany. And I met somebody, and we were kind of like swapping all these funny stories. And this person was like, I think I want to write a book about this. And I was like, it's not a book, it's a podcast, because I was so familiar with the medium. And so we worked together for a short amount of time. That project was very successful, but like we sort of imploded. And then after that, I kind of rebranded into Hot Takes and Deep Dives. And I kind of spun away from Housewives being the main niche and more into maybe going back more into my roots of what I was doing back on the website as a writer, more like journalistic type stuff, and making it more like gay pop culture. And like Housewives is part of that, but there's so much more stuff that I'm even more into. Yeah, like I kind of grew out of the Housewives stuff, and now I lean into the stuff, even if it's super niche. I sometimes find that there's stuff that I'm afraid to even do, and then that stuff winds up being the most popular. So I'm sorry if that was like too long of an answer.
Not at all. And I think the listeners need that.
Okay.
Because, you know, and I think Natalie and I both, when we've been on other people and we get asked questions, a lot of creators do try to hold a lot to the vest in terms of how they do or operate, because they're to each their own. For me, I was a self-taught person in that regard. I'm a visual learner, so I was interested in production, I was interested in audio, I was interested in creating, I was interested in all these things, writing, storytelling. So it was about harnessing those things into something that I actually was passionate about, not just covering a show that's popular, but I actually dive into the psychology of Housewives. So it's so important of like, yes, I agree. Like some of the stuff that I put out that I've been like, oh God, I hope this doesn't go too viral because I'm nervous that I even put it out. It will explode. And then it's like the greatest thing. But it's always when I feel now fearful that I'm like, nope, I have to push this out and take the risk. So no, I think listeners always ask these questions. Like, can you pivot? If you did well in one niche, can you then say, I want to expand on this and not be stuck there anymore? And obviously the answer is yes, but it sometimes is the thing that holds people back from even trying, is what we've discovered.
Well, you have to start somewhere, and then things will fall into place. You'll find your place. You just have to start from somewhere. It's like the most common mistake most people do is that because they see like the bigger content creators and they see how professional they are from their background, from their mics, from, you know, their cameras. You don't need all that just to start, you know, starting off. You just need a computer and you just need to be comfortable talking to a camera.
Starting off, I was holding, in one hand, I was holding my phone, and the other hand, I was holding a recorder. That's how I started. Right. I mean, that was before there was all of the, you know, podcasts weren't. That was how I was doing those interviews. I'm sure there was a more sophisticated way to record, you know, interviews. Like I was interviewing like in that first run. I mean, I've been lucky enough now to get to interview a lot of those people again now in like in 2023. Like back then that was when I first interviewed Sandra Bernhard, Margaret Cho, Jennifer Beals. I interviewed Toni Collette.
Wow.
So many people that were like
Fran Drescher, I think.
Oh yeah, I interviewed Fran Drescher on recent,
Yeah.
like within the past year on Hot Takes.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
you've interviewed like amazing icons. And
I mean, Rosie
that
O'Donnell was like, that was like the dream guest. People are like, oh, who's your dream guest? I'm like, now it's more like a new level, or it's more like exploring other areas. Cause like, unless Madonna's coming on my show, there's, I've been lucky enough that I've been able to, I've had good luck and good strategy, and you really got to be creative, even getting through to people. Like it's I could I could do an hour on all the different avenues I've gone to get some of these bigger names. Sometimes they come it's all different ways.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing, is like, it's not one size fits all, for sure. I think some people think there's this one little blueprint out there that we all secretly have, and
No.
it's so not the case.
Yeah.
But I want to focus a little bit more. So given your focus on queer pop iconography, could you share some of the insights into the role of pop culture in shaping the identity and community of the LGBTQ plus individuals, both historically and in present day?
Okay, wait. Say that in plain language.
So how essentially has pop culture shifted the identity and the community of the LGBTQ plus individuals, based on where we're at in this current space that we're in, present day, but historically as well? I guess give us like the context and how it's kind of evolved.
I think the main difference, I think that queer culture has always been pop culture, except, for example, Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol was pop culture, but a lot of these people were closeted. So a lot of it, all of the tastemakers at the time, they were all gay, but we weren't allowed to talk about it, or they suddenly died of AIDS. So that was pop culture in the 80s and 90s. And then when the cultural shift happened, that like being gay was cool or was okay or whatever, like just like time evolved, it's now that like we're just all saying we're gay. But like, I think it's always been the same voices have always been the tastemakers. It's just that like there's the veneer is off. I think it's as simple as that.
I do too, actually. I know some people think the opposite, but I actually think it's always been there. People are just more free to actually be themselves fully. Yeah. And so they're showing up that way. And I think that to some people who are not evolved would be like, agenda, don't shove that down my throat.
No, like all the biggest, I just found out it was so many big recording artists in the 50s and 60s. I recently found out like they were gay. I mean, so many like just so many actors like in history were gay, never talked about it. But when you find out like, oh, it's actually always been these queer people. I mean, look at Fran Lebowitz, like just people who've had the biggest impact on society have been gay.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's just because like I see the stuff through that lens, but like, yeah, that's the way I view the world.
I mean, I guess it's the same for me. I mean, I'm coming from the gay space, so I guess my lens is the same as yours in some capacity. But when I was in the fashion beauty industry, the people that actually were making those like decisions that got pushed out by the marketing teams were all gay men. Like, it was interesting because outside of that office, it was nothing but women, executives, sales, this. But the big guy or woman was gay and was like, no, we're not doing that fabric. No, we're not doing that swatch of colors again. We did that 2 seasons ago. And then that was it. And then you have these massive teams that go and run and scatter the information and do what they will with it. So maybe they were in the background more historically, to your point, and now they're able to take credit and be openly honest about their creativity, their authenticity, and what they bring to the table, because it adds so much to the story. And I think people have evolved enough that they can look at something and say, wow, that is such a great journey for this human being to get from point A to point B and be themselves authentically and be taken seriously at the same time.
And also,
and to add to that, sorry, I was going to say there is freedom of expression now. We
Mhm.
live at a time where there is freedom of expression, and freedom of and expression and creativity is actually encouraged. And I really think that because the LGBTQIA plus community has been under a thumb, a societal thumb, let's just say, and things have to be, I don't care what you do or who you sleep with, but you don't need to advertise this. And this is how it used to be. And I really feel because there is freedom of expression, a lot of these people now, a lot of people in the community are now coming out. They have this, they feel inspired to share their creativity and their work. And at the same time, that inspires the younger generation too. It inspires the younger generation, regardless of orientation, of sexual orientation, to express themselves in a unique and creative way. And I think this is why the veneer is no longer there, as you said, Jess. That's why. It's because this is how the collective, that's where the collective is headed. And because we're all connected, we're all energy, as we mentioned before, we're connected. And I feel that whether you are conservative, Republican, liberal, it doesn't matter. You can at least appreciate someone's creativity and someone's way to get there as well. And I do feel that especially people in the LGBTQIA community are extremely resilient, and they definitely know how to be heard, how to make themselves heard. Something that maybe someone like me, who I'm straight, don't know, because I've never been under that societal margin, if you will. I hope that makes sense.
I think also, to piggyback on both of your comments, I think also it all used to be in history. All of this stuff used to be subtext. Like it would be like, even in art, no matter in art, music, television, film, it all used to be subtext, and gay audiences would recognize something or they would see something, but it would never be explicit. But now it's, what is the opposite of subtext? Main text? I don't know what that word is, but like now it's in the forefront. It is like explicitly, yeah, this is what it is. And now listen, maybe things were better when they were subtext. Like, that's an argument that is worth discussing and exploring. But yeah, I think that's also like the biggest change over time, like moving from subtext to being explicitly one thing or another.
It's almost like going from like supporting role to main character in some ways, because well, I've had feedback from a lot of people that, are on this journey, and sometimes it is too much because they feel like that is the one thing that's spotlighted on them first, rather than what they bring to the table. And so sometimes that gets conflicted with marketing, or, then you have, and I love watching the younger generations, straight, gay, doesn't matter. They're finding their way on their own terms. And I think that's beautiful, because had I had this technology at their age, who knows where I would be right now with my so I love where it's going. At some point things will balance out. That's, it always goes really extreme when you've been pushed under a thumb for so long. It's like, I'm out of here. It's like when you first go to a club, you're like, I love this. I'm going to come every night. This is the best thing. And then eventually you're like, okay, I will see you once a month, ladies.
Yeah, it's true. And speaking of, I wanted to ask you, Jess, what is because now that everyone has access to a platform and to be a content creator, but at the same time, you're accessible to a wider audience, which means that you're not going to be liked by everyone. And at the same time, you are going to get a lot of criticism. And in the end, some people will get canceled. So my question to you is, what do you think of this current cancel culture that exists? And a lot of creators tiptoe around that. So they're not true to their content or true to themselves, of fear of being canceled because of how they voice an opinion or of their own ideologies.
I think there's no such thing as being canceled. I think there can be a period of time that backlash is real, and like that happens like if you're on a huge platform. Like I'm thinking of something like Stassi on Vanderpump Rules, right? So you can be, somebody like that can be fired from a job, but now it's her choice not to return. Like I think it's not real. It's just, to me, it's just like a buzzworthy thing, and then like people forget about something the next day, and they're the people who are really into them. It keeps the people who were real fans of their work, or people for whom they feel a real connection with. It deepens that connection, and it sort of like gets rid of the excess that wasn't really loyal to begin with, if that makes sense.
Totally. I mean, I think I see it a lot in the comments based on which housewife I'm talking about, but it could be one wrong episode for that housewife, and everyone sometimes it's like, cancel her,
right?
Get her. And it's like, oh my gosh, guys, it's an edited show. Let's give her a break.
Right.
But at the same time, you can't cancel someone. Like, you just can't. Like, people can stop following people, sure, but to your point, those people that were already loyal, they're gonna be more loyal,
right?
Like, now more than ever. But people always seem to bounce back from being canceled in some capacity.
Saying somebody is canceled, that is just an inflammatory, flamboyant word to say that they stepped in some shit, and like tale as old as time. I mean, I don't know. Everybody, it seems, I won't get political, but like it's impossible to truly. I mean, I guess maybe somebody like Matt Lauer, he's kind of done.
I would think so.
Yeah, maybe he's like that. But you have to get to a point where like you have to have done something so illegal and so horrendous and reputation and career ending to actually be, quote, done.
Although I will disagree with you, Georgia. I will agree that people can't cancel someone, but the studios and the networks can.
Oh,
look
sure.
at Amber Heard. Look at Armie Hammer. Look at certain personalities, because that's canceling your career. Like Amber Heard after the Johnny Depp defamation trial, she didn't get her role was cut from Aquaman. Aquaman, was it? What's it called? Yeah, I think. Yeah. So I mean, look at that. And now she's not working. She's in Spain. Look at Armie Hammer. I mean, okay, horrific stuff that he did. Okay, but allegedly, we don't know. I don't know if it's been proven. But anyways, I'm just saying that I do believe that people or celebrities or public figures can get canceled for an oopsie. I mean, Stassi's not the best example, or Jax, because they did, like, Stassi, she's a mom now. Jax has come back.
He's back.
I mean,
he's back.
He's the number one guy in the group. So he's back, but I think it works differently in reality TV than it does, let's say, in the entertainment or in the film industry, or even in the music industry as well. Because I worked in the music industry, and I can tell you, because I worked for Sony Music, and if they decide that a artist, a performer, is damaging the label, or there's some kind of breach in their contract, or they're losing fans, they will cancel them without a second thought like that. And we'll forget about them in a heartbeat. So cancel culture is real, but I agree with you, Jess. It's more of a buzzword because we do throw it out there, just like we do with the word gaslighting, with the word narcissist. There's so
Right.
many buzzwords that are like
Right.
going around right now.
Yeah.
But I do feel that though, a lot of creators, performers, actors, public figures are afraid of the cancel culture, if you will, or the backlash.
Yeah.
Because yes, people will forget in 2 or 3 years time from now, but what are you going to do in the meantime? If
Right.
you've been an actor your whole life, if you're Tom Cruise your whole life and suddenly you get canceled, what do you do for the, for that time in the medium,
Right.
What do you do?
Yeah.
So that's how I see it with cancel
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
So as the creator and executive producer of Finding Fire Island, can you share some of the most surprising or enlightening discoveries you made during the research and production process?
Oh my God, I'm so glad you know about that. Yeah, I mean, yes, I think the story of John White, well, I guess like broadly speaking, I think it's so interesting. Like for people who aren't familiar with, so Fire Island is this place off the coast of New York, off the coast of Long Island, and it's basically, there are two communities that are part of like a larger like strip of land where it's only accessible by ferry. It's all boardwalk and you walk everywhere. Two of those communities are like the majority are like gay, so it is very much like you get on this ferry and like you cross through the Wizard of Oz and like suddenly you're in this like gay Fantasia. Now, what I find just like top line the most interesting, so the two communities are the Pines and Cherry Grove. And I think the thing that I found so hilarious is just that it's just such a microcosm for the rest of the world. Like the politics that goes on between these two remote communities that are only, Cherry Grove only has like 300 houses. It's like everything that plays out in the United States plays out between, there's this long-standing rivalry between the two. So I think that's funny, and like we play into that in the series. But as far as like like something to like really juicy, I think the story of one of the first owners of the Pines, this guy John White, he was a closeted gay guy, and he bought all of the businesses down in the Pines, and he brought a lot of celebrities and sophistication to the Pines, but it was very much an undercurrent. Like he was friends with Calvin Klein and David Geffen, and so it brought all of this sophistication and it really put the Pines on the map. But he would like shine a flashlight on people if like people were dancing too close. He would he's known as just being a complete asshole. And so I think when people talk about John White, he's now dead, but when people talk about his reign in the Pines during the 60s, I think it's fascinating that the face and the owner of the Pines was closeted himself. And I think that says a lot about the time, and it says a lot about ourselves. And I think it's just a piece of history that shouldn't be forgotten.
How did you decide to embark on this? On this project?
So I'm actually from Long Island, and I'm not from Fire Island, but I'm from Long Island, and I've been going to Fire Island for about 15 years.
Wow.
And I've always been obsessed with the history, and there are so few documentaries out about it. There are like a few shitty documentaries, and some of them aren't even accessible. You can't get them on Amazon. There are a few books, but there's such limited information. There are a few websites, and I thought, well, I wanted to create the piece of media that I wanted. As somebody who's obsessed with Fire Island, I was like, I want to create the thing that I would be obsessed with, gobbling up every single piece of it. And I'm not a filmmaker. This is my medium. And so that was how I did it. I mean, I was scared to take it on because I knew that it was like it's a big undertaking. Like I did all the interviews up front, and then having to piece together a narrative story I've never done anything like that. And it's been like one of the most rewarding experiences I've had. Like, I'm so glad that I like did it. It was friends who encouraged me to do it. They're like, if you don't do it, somebody's going to do it. And it was your idea first. So like, maybe just go do it and get the credit.
Love those friends, because that's
Yeah.
so true. That
Yeah.
would have happened. Someone would have woke up one day like, you know what this needs?
Yeah.
But speaking of like queer culture, we're seeing, and I don't know if you're familiar, we just spoke to Joey Zalzig a couple weeks back, and he was a part of a reality series that MTV was going to put out that was going to mimic the style of Housewives, but kind of center it around gay men that live in Los Angeles, called The Real Friends of WeHo.
Yeah. Oh, he's the one who he like left or something before they started filming?
No, actually, no, that is, I forget his name, but he so I covered this show, even though people sent me death threats for doing so, literally. Gay men were in my DMs being like, stop recapping this show. This is not us.
Giorgio, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Did you watch Finding Prince Charming on Logo?
Of course, I was a big Logo person when nobody even knew what it was. They're like, what is that?
Okay, I was obsessed with Finding Prince Charming, and I interviewed the two runner. I was obsessed with the main guy, with Robert Sepulveda Jr., the guy who wound up, it was revealed that he was an escort. And this is an example of an episode that I recorded it, and I held on to it for months. I was like, maybe I'm never going to put this out, because I don't think I was like, I don't know if people are even going to remember this show. Why would they care? I interviewed the two runner-ups, the guy Brandon, who he wound up dating, and Justin, who's like the really funny, like third runner-up. The response, that's an example of like, that's an example of my intuition. Like, just like follow the thing that like follow the thing that is gnawing at you. And so I'm sorry, I bring it up because there are few gay shows. Anyway, that show.
So I was
good, but it was like,
listen,
very watchable in a way.
Like, to be quite honest, The Real Friends of WeHo was on the wrong network. Okay, it should never have been on MTV. I think everyone can agree with that. Where I get lost in the gay culture of it all is the same gay men that are throwing tomatoes at these gay men in Los Angeles, Beverly Hills adjacent area, are the same ones that are up all these Beverly Hills women's asses and are like, yes, girl, yes. But as soon as they see someone aspirational that they could actually identify with on screen, it's almost triggering their insecurities more. And so the reaction is like, who are you people? This isn't a real depiction of what gay friend groups look like. They're not even really friends.
Well, the number one thing that I say this as a generalization, but like I have it backed up with a lot of evidence. The number one thing gay men cannot tolerate is a gay man on TV.
I've noticed that. I have noticed that.
This is not the case with women. It's so interesting. And I would love to like dig into that more. Like, what is it? Internalized homophobia? It's something.
I feel like
I think internalized homophobia is a piece of it, but I've talked about this with people like offline, and I think it's a mixture of a lot of different things.
Sure. I mean, I'm sure everyone's looking at it from a different lens, obviously, but the reaction always was so like visceral some days. Like, people like were engaging the recap, but not because they watched it or cared to. It was like bashing every single one of them till the season finale. And then they were like, yes, don't bring it back. Like, what is going on here? So it's perplexing in that space. Also, being a content creator who's gay and more on the flamboyant side, like, I rub some queer guys the wrong way. And so they will come to me in the DMs and try to like poke holes and try to get into my insecurities. But it's like, I don't know why, or where do we want us to go then? Do we not want to see ourselves on TVs in that capacity? Or how do you want to see yourself there is the question. And I always pose that back to them. Like, well, then what would you like? What group of friends would you stomach watching have interactions with each other?
Think about the reaction Bros got. And it's so I did an episode of my show, and I've asked people who are relevant to the top, like guests that I interview, a question I would ask is, why do you think Bros was dragged by the public, or like gay men in general, and yet the movie Fire Island with Joachim Booster and Bowen Yang, why was that well received generally? And I think that, again, there's a lot of nuance to it. I think people have a visceral reaction to Billy Eichner. I think there's a lot.
I think that's really what it was. It was Billy and his response to, and look, I didn't agree 100% with his statement there, but I understand the aggravation a little bit from his angle too, because it's like, come on, this was like the first big like movie that shows it's a rom-com for gay guys. Like, we grew up watching rom-coms and secretly hoping we were going to be the Reese Witherspoon or this person of the storyline. So to see it play out, you're like, yes, this is exciting. But then to turn around, it's like, oh. But then the Fire Island one, I don't know. Was it Billy? Had they not had Billy on Bros, would that have changed it or made it not? I feel like it has something to do with when there's a strong, bitey, dare I say, flamboyant character who is gay on screen, whether it's a movie or reality TV, it's an automatic nope. But then when you do the easygoing, or it's an actor who's just like, there's no real.
I think a huge part of it is that Billy Eichner is he's a white guy, and Fire Island was cast with like mostly people of color.
Sure.
And so people were able to, and debating the merits of both movies is an entirely different conversation, like which is the actual better movie. It's so interesting, and I've like dug into this on my show. I think it's like a never ending, like interesting conversation.
Oh, I think it's an ever evolving one too. I think it'll continue to evolve.
But honest question, do you think that, going back to what Giorgio said, where you said that there are like gay people that look at successful gay men or gay people on TV and they have a reaction to it, do you think it's a generational thing? Do you think it's because like the younger generation, Gen Z right now, things are more free, right? You're more free now. We have like different pronouns, and there is so many different ways of expressing your sexuality. So there is that freedom, whereas maybe the older generation, maybe including ours, Giorgio, maybe, things were like more closeted, and maybe there is resentment. There is sort of like an underlying resentment of seeing someone who's successful on your screen, whereas you had to hide it. You had to be a certain way, behave a certain way, just so you wouldn't be marginalized by society. Just an honest question as a straight woman. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to understand why there is that reaction to that. Oh, Giorgio, you're muted.
Oops. I was thinking it probably is generational, because I think the mindset was completely different, obviously, even just 10, 15 years ago compared to now. Now it's like, I could go into Starbucks and my older mentality would see someone more flamboyantly dressed, and flamboyant doesn't necessarily mean you're gay. It just means you're flamboyant. I know a ton of straight men that dress flamboyantly, and it's fantastic. But now it's like, you can't, everyone's anything they want to be. So there is no more of this, like, what are you and who do you like? And it's like, it's a free for all in that regard, which is great, because it's freeing to a younger generation to not have that pressure and anxiety that when they wake up every day, they may be, typecasted or marginalized, etc. So I think there's this push-pull, I think the older generation didn't get to have that experience, and maybe some of them did want that, but realized that's not going to work. So now seeing it play out with others, maybe they just don't like, maybe it comes off like, who are these little shits at TV?
Okay, so I have a different take. So from
Tell us.
my observation has been the slightly older the generation that lived through the AIDS epidemic. I think they, like the older gays, like they love everything. They are not critical, like they love it. So I don't think they're like feeling any kind of way. They're not critical. They love everything. I think the younger generation, like Gen Z, they love everything. I think it is, I don't know, what is I guess it's like millennial, maybe like the younger millennials.
Millennials, yeah, I would say.
Think millennials, they are the YouTubers. And I think they have the mentality of, oh, I could do that. Should have been me.
Oh my God, yes.
That's it.
You know what? That's it, Natalie. And that's why you were saying in our age group, that makes sense because it is.
Should have been
exactly
me.
that. That could have been me.
What does
I
he
could
have?
do that. What are you so special for? And
so then resentment grows.
But it's all internal.
Me, but it's not me.
But it's internal, right? Because I mean, we're all spiritual here. The first part of getting what you want out of your life is to show up. You have to put action. We live in a reality situation. You do have to put something up to show the universe that you want it. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. So I think that is, the train left the station for them. They see the train now coming in and out of the station, and they're like, well, I could have did that 10 times over and whatever. So, we're not going to solve all these problems today, I'm sure.
It's very interesting though.
It is.
It is. We could be talking about this for hours because there's so much to unfold. It's like an onion, peel off the layers just to get to the core of it. But what is the core of it? No one knows. No one knows because society is evolving so fast right now. Things are changing so fast that I don't think that we can get to the core of it. At least not now. At least not now. The core of all of these issues that are out there, and behavioral issues and racist issues and sexist issues and so many issues that are now in the forefront. Now they're there. We're all seeing it. It's right in front of us. You can't hide from it. You can't stick your neck neck in the sand anymore. It's there. But I really do feel that generations play a big part in it, because I do think that our generation, which is sort of like, we're sort of on the cusp of like ex-millennials, Giorgio and I do think that there's a lot of baggage that comes with our generation. And a lot of times there is a lot of deflection rather than introspection, which is an issue, and it's probably, which is kind of like trickling down to the gay community as well. So the interesting talk. Jess, are you ready? Because I've been pulling cards for you while we were talking.
Oh my God, yes.
Oh boy,
Here we go. So this is for the next 6 months. This is a quick lightning reading, all right? If you want an in-depth, we can do this offline at another time. So I've got to tell you two things. So I can see that you're on a very creative streak right now, like creative juices. If not now, it's going to start next year. I feel it's going to be super creative for you. Very, very, very busy. I do see a new project. Someone is going to approach you with a proposal for a new project for you, something different. Okay. Very creative. I feel that you're going to be part of that creative, the creative side of things. But at the same side, I do see something else ending. Something that you were working on, or some kind of project. I do see that it's not going anywhere, and then you will decide to pull the plug on that as well. But it's not a bad thing, actually. I do see a female, a fire sign female. That's also you. It could also be you, but I do see there is a female who's going to play a very, very important role, because 2024 is opening. I'm seeing 2 new doors for you. Okay. Which in the long term are incredible and very good for you, because this is it's leading you on a path of extreme, how I'm going to say it, you're going to be creating a lot. There's a lot of, I see you creating, writing. I also see you writing. So scripts, manuscripts. I see you very, very, very busy, but very inspired as well. So a lot of new things happening. Hold on. I see you traveling too. I see some traveling for works, traveling for pleasure as well. But I also see that something from your past, you're attached to something or someone from your past, which is going to come back in 2024, and you will have to deal with it. Okay. I feel it's more so someone from your past that you're not in communication right now. There's a lot of stuff, like a lot of baggage, a lot of stuff that hasn't been worked on, or you haven't healed from that. But this year is the year where it's all coming to a close regarding that, because you're going to find this person in front of you, and
they're going to physically be in front of me. It's not just going to be a mental thing.
And physically, I don't mean they're, knock on your door, you're going to bump into them. It could be a call, it could be a text, or it could be in an event, for instance, you see them there, or something along those lines. But yeah, so you will have to face someone from your past in order to close it, to close this and move on from that. And as soon as you move on from that, I feel energetically you're opening up and you're starting to make space for all these creative endeavors, especially this one that's coming. I want to say in 6 months time from now. So I would say around April, May, this is going to happen. So I see someone coming to you with a proposal for a huge project, something huge. And you writing. I literally see you writing, and being very, very, what's called not inspired. And I feel like you're opening your heart next year 2024. You're going to open your heart. So something else Spirit just told me, I feel there's an outline. If there isn't one, I feel that it's something that you're thinking of doing, like an outline of something like a memoir or an autobiography or a book or short stories that are inspired by your own life.
Wow. Okay.
You're going to start this. I'm not saying it's going to be published this year or you're going to come out with it publicly this year, but I do see this starting this year as well. Something that you're going to start writing and putting it down on paper.
Wow, that's very interesting.
If you
we need to do a private reading so I can dig into some other area to go deeper.
Anytime. Yeah. I get that all the time, but anytime.
Yeah.
I feel like in these situations, Natalie does have the depth and she's just holding back because it's just like, we're obviously like, we're not going to put you on blast here and be like, wow. But I do love, because I always watch people's facial expressions during this, because I always like to pick up where there's this aha moment. And I find, like, I don't know if you had one, but there's like, sometimes it doesn't come to you until after, like what I was saying earlier with Caitlin, like she was so confused. And then it was like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy weird. It's like, you don't know until it happens, but then it's like, it's in the, it's happening around you. It just hasn't clicked yet with you. So it's always so interesting to see how people receive it.
And that's a good point, Georgia, for saying that, because I tell my clients that I'm always like, take notes, first of all, because you might not remember everything that we say during the reading, first of all. And second of all, you need a couple of days to process the information that is coming through. So a lot of times, like, let's say deceased loved, because I'm also a medium, right? So deceased loved ones might come through in a reading, and I might, I'll tell my client, for instance, I have this man, he looks like this, his name is this, blah, blah, blah. This is what I'm getting. And sometimes it doesn't click. And then I get an email a couple of days later and they're like, you know what? I spoke to my mom. I know who that was. That was my uncle who died before I was born, blah, blah, blah. He came through the message. I told my mom what he said. It makes perfect sense to my mom. So a lot of information that comes through these readings, you need a little bit of time to process. And as Giorgio says, it needs time for things to unfold and for you to see for yourself. So yeah, I'm not, because this is a podcast about something else, I don't want to get too deep into what I'm seeing.
No, I'm like, none of this is, there's no part of me that's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, but I'd have to like speak more candidly to
Well,
absolutely. Yeah. No, totally. Yeah. You'll definitely want to dig your heels in for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Oh my gosh, this was so exciting. I'm so happy you joined us. Thank you so much. This was so great. I'm so happy. It's just such a great conversation to have. And we'll definitely have to firstly book a reading with Natalie, but secondly, come back and give us an update on some of these things, because that is something we're looking forward to, is following up with these guests from these readings to see, hey, did anything transpire and how did that work out for you?
Yeah. And that's when I say you heard it here first, because that's my thing, right? I always say, you're on my channel, I'm always like, you heard it here first.
Just tell everyone, please tell everyone where they can find your beautiful content and where they can listen to you.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm Jess X NYC on Instagram, and my weekly show is Hot Takes and Deep Dives, where like I interview people and I, dive deep into like certain sort of various interesting topics. And then Finding Fire Island is an 8-episode docu-series that's all out now. You can binge the whole thing. And it has a lot of like Matt Rogers, Margaret Cho, Joel Kim Booster, Ben Rimmelauer is in it, Brian Moylan, like lots of familiar faces are in it, as well as people from like the 50s and 60s and 70s who've seen it all.
I love it. I can't wait to deep dive into that. Yeah. Well, thank you again for coming on.
Thank
we'll
you,
definitely
Jess.
be speaking to you very soon.
Thank you so much.
Of course. All right, guys, and that's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you are listening to us, make sure you leave us a 5-star review on the respective platform that you're listening to us on. And if you're watching us on Spotify, thank you. Make sure you let us know down below what you thought of this episode. Natalie, where can everyone find us?
Yes, you can find us on YouTube, on TikTok, and on Instagram. Giorgio goes under Giorgio Says on all these platforms, and I go under Femme Tarot. So please make sure that you follow us over there as well, because there's a lot of content that we roll out every week.
And if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure you get subscribed and hit that notification bell so you don't miss when we upload our new episode, which will be once a week.
And if you want to email us with your questions, what kind of questions do you want us to ask future guests that are going to be coming on this podcast? And you make sure that you follow us, because we have a long list of incredible content creators that will be joining this podcast in the very, very near future. So please email us at creatingthecreatorpod@gmail.com.
Perfect. And until the next episode, you guys, Natalie and myself will talk to you on the next episode. Bye.
Till next time. Bye.